Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How's everyone? I don't hear any enthusiasm today. What happened? Hello.
Hello.
I was saying no enthusiasm today. What happened? Y'all supposed to be excited.
Well, I think for me, I'm gravely unprepared for today's class, but I did get email. So that's why I'm quiet. I kind of just want to blend in with the background, although that's almost impossible.
Blend in with what does that mean?
That means, although you could see like 5 people in here, I'm hoping you don't necessarily see me.
Hello, Sandy. How are you?
Morning, good morning. I'm great. Good afternoon, sorry.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you should be great because the only homework I got.
Sorry?
I said the only homework I got was from you. I don't know what happened. Rest.
I thought you say you didn't get.
No, I got it and I read it.
Okay, yeah, that was a hard push, I must say.
No,
No, not the material. We're in the middle of some training at our firm. For some new accounting software, and it's been killing us for like 2 weeks leading up to the launch, which will probably be next week. So
okay.
Yeah.
We were busy.
That was the hustle.
Let me hear the excuse of the others. Christina.
Why my excuse have to be first?
It's something you didn't do, so let me hear it. What happened?
I had a major deadline I needed to meet this week, so that took up literally every ounce of time I had. So I hadn't had the time to like really review what was necessary, and I was hoping too that the recording of last week's class could kind of catch me up, but I didn't see that yet. So that's my sorry excuse. It's a sorry excuse.
Okay. Let me
But
tell
I'm
you.
going to make sure that I get catch up this week because I am behind.
Yeah, because what I don't want is when you do your final or your capstone, you haven't practiced enough. And then when you see your grade, you start to panic.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so you have to start practicing. So at least when I give you feedback, you'll understand or you can ask questions.
Definitely.
Shirella.
Good afternoon.
Good.
Namiz, I had messaged you because I mean, I was busy as well, but that's no excuse. We were all working adults and we should know how to balance our time if we decided to take a course. So I don't have much of an excuse. I'm in the middle of CRS as well. And I had messaged you because I wanted to work some more on the ones I had already submitted, but I just was not able to finish it up.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I was just wondering if you all were just ignoring me.
No.
I'm happy. Some more. Okay.
Not at all.
Last but not least, Makira. Is she there?
I did make an attempt to answer one of the questions, and I still have to submit the other one. I'm having a hard time trying to understand exactly what the question is asking me to write about.
Just make an attempt.
For the first question, I did it. I understood it. But the second question, I don't know. I couldn't put together as to exactly
right. Just try. Just try. Yeah, just try whatever you think it is, write it. And then next class, when we go over it and you begin to say, oh, that's what this is about, try to get the connection and then try it again.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, other students have done it before. They have answered it and it was nowhere in the ballpark at all. And the minute we begin to discuss it in class, they say, oh, yes, 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 yes. And then they're able to understand it. And then when they have other questions, they see how to analyze what the issue really is. What is the question asking you?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
So that's that. I feel better now. I thought y'all just didn't like me anymore. But okay. Midterm. You have, everybody should have received it. You had 5 questions and a bonus. Any questions?
No, it seems pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Just the time. We gotta find the time.
Okay, find the time.
Yeah, but it seems straightforward from what we've covered so far.
Right. So I'm not a stickler for the date.
Yes, and I appreciate that so much.
Okay, so I have a date set, August 20th, but I know everybody is working and I know some people want to like to give it its best. They like to, prepare it and then read it over again. But my only thing to you is that I need it before you sit the final. Because remember, when you sit the final, I also have to mark your capstone, which is due that same day. So I don't want to be marking 3 papers. So if you can't make the 20th, it's fine. But just make sure I have it before the last day of class or on the last day of class. So I can mark it between then and the final exam. Sounds good?
Sounds good. When is the final exam?
Send me these questions. I don't that you don't have a schedule. Some of your schedule of you.
I don't have it. I have it, but I don't have it handy.
Yeah,
The
it's
final is October 15th.
Thank you. Whoever said that, thank you.
when is it?
October 15th.
See, there you go. You see how far that is? Okay, for the capstone, one correction. The last question, number 3, the very last line. When I asked you, advise Miss Winston, and would your answer different if X, Y limited? That was before I created a name. So then that should be BLM. Now be mindful that when you do a capstone, these answers are not long, but they're not short either. So you have to explain why you're saying what you're saying and use case law where you can. Sandy, I like how you use your case law.
Thank you. I was a little worried that I was running on too much. So you can correct me if I can, but if you need to when it comes down to exam time. But thank you.
You did it well. Question 2, you didn't put in any law.
Question 2 for the last assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I used
Give me a case law.
uh-huh.
I want legislation also.
Okay.
Mm.
But did you see my note about
Yes, I saw your note. But if you
you
follow,
agree with that? Mm-hmm.
but if you follow the premise
Mm-hmm.
on the case law that you use and the way in which it was stated and common practice, they fall in a particular category.
Okay.
In the legislation.
I thought about that. I think I was I should have thought more outside the box. I mean, based on my note, you can see what I was thinking, but I got you. I got you. And I will look at further sections, and I'm sure when we go over it, then you'll pinpoint exactly what I should have referenced. But
Right.
And that was another thing I was thinking, am I going too far outside the box if I look at other areas that we didn't necessarily cover in the when we looked at the acts?
No, when we do homework or assignments, as I call them, remember I told you those points, I add those to your midterm, or I can add them to your capstone. I can't add it to your final, but I can add any one of those. The whole point of those is you can't cover everything in the lecture itself. So these assignments are still covering the same topic, company law. But
Right, but research is critical.
Yes.
So
And
we
so
can be as broad as with our research, but just
Yeah.
make it has to make sense and tie into whatever. Okay, I got you.
Right, because I want you to be able to use your legislation, look at the model articles, and try to come up with a solution. Because it doesn't come out of the air, but you gotta have the basis to come to some conclusion, to give a recommendation if an issue comes up. And it has to be on law.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody understood that? They may think we're having a private conversation.
No, I'm hoping this helps everybody.
Yeah, and let me hear. Christina, does this help?
Shirella gives a thumbs up.
Or Sherelle?
She gives a thumbs up.
Yes, ma'am, very helpful.
Okay. And like I was saying, once you answer these little homework questions, then you have an idea when you're answering your midterm and your capstone and the final exam, you have that confidence that I am addressing the issue and I've covered everything. I've looked at common law, I've looked at legislation. So in the final exam, I don't expect you to put a particular section because you may not remember the number, but you should have an idea of what that section says and what does it mean. And if there is an actual case that you can apply that is similar to what's being discussed in the scenario. Because that's what you do in company law. And for the cases, you don't have to quote the name. Because at the one that you applied, Sandy, you don't really need to remember all that long name. It is just so simple.
Okay, got you.
Yeah. So, nobody have any more comments? We're good. But practice, if you start practicing it, the way in which you draft your answers for the assignment will train your mind for when you see questions like this, whether or not it's company law or any other law classes you do later. You begin to see how to deal with issues. Okay, so, all right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so I really need you to just carve out some time and try to answer these. So for next week, I'll send you all another question. It's like I say, it's for practice. You do it if you want to. If you don't, then it's up to you. But I find that those who practice it as we go along, when it comes to the final, they don't have that difficulty, or even to the capstone. Oh, and another thing I wanted to mention in the capstone, you notice at the first question, I told you can refer to the UK Corporate Governance Code. That's a very good document to review with regard to corporate governance in companies. Because here in the Bahamas, the only document we actually have is the central bank's corporate governance guidelines, which is more general. But if you have a look at the UK corporate governance guidelines, because they've been working on it for a very long time, but it gives good examples and is more expansive. So you learn things of how they put their guidelines in place and trying to run a company. So the good things, even if you have an issue at work, you may be able to say, you know what? As a part of best practice, I think we should recommend to the shareholders or recommend to the directors, depends on who your audience is, that these are some things that we can put in place to better manage the company. So have a look at it, and then you can see how to apply it to the scenarios and the issues that I put in that question. But it's a good learning resource. All right, so let's do unit 5. And like I told you, it's not that long. And so if you're not going shopping, you can answer my last week's questions. So let's talk about corporate record keeping. So we know that as an IBC, you must have a registered agent, registered office in the Bahamas. As a CAC company, of course, you have a registered office. And you could have a registered agent. But why do we have to keep these corporate records? Why is it important? And it's important for a certain number of reasons. One is to ensure limited liability protection for limited liability companies. 2 is to ensure statutory, legal, and regulatory compliance. And 3rd, it's to allow shareholders to be able to inspect corporate documents properly and adequately. And 4th is to fully document the shareholders, directors, and officers of a company and their due diligence information. And lastly, is to represent current and accurate information on the company, its corporate and financial affairs, and shareholding. So let's look at the very first one. What do they mean to ensure limited liability protection for limited liability companies? Why is that important? Yes, Sharella.
And I'm just thinking and going back to the principle. I mean, the whole basis of setting up these companies is to protect the individual behind the company. So yeah, just to protect the actual shareholders.
Now, okay.
Meaning, if they're being sued, you know, they wouldn't come after them personally, but no, I don't know.
Yeah, but I want you to make it clearer.
I don't know.
No, think about it now. Think about the 5 points I said. If whether you're a CAC or an IBC, there's certain documents that have to be maintained. And those documents represent that protection. What does that, right? So what does that mean to you if you were a shareholder?
I remember, so I remember in the Salomon print, the case where when they saw that the company was set up properly and all the relevant documents was in place, that was the basis to say, okay, look, the company is a legal entity. So for me as a shareholder, having the documents set up and filed and everything, that means that I do have a legitimate company. So if anything is to happen, I should be covered, considering that my company is a legitimate one. I know I'm off, but I don't know.
No, you're not off. Someone else can expand on it, because I'm trying to get you to put it all in one sentence, but you're missing out some things because you said the document. So when they talk about ensuring limited liability protection for limited liability companies, you went to Solomon, you're right. Because that's I remember that's the ground. That's the case. But When you speak about limited liability protection, you're talking about having in place your memo, your arts, and your certificate of incorporation. In addition to that, your certificate of good standing. Because that's going to help you with your limited protection. Depends on the entity, any other regulatory requirement for the type of business that you're in or the business that you're doing, that you have all of your requisite approvals. That gives you all of your limited liability protection. Referring to Solomon case, that you are separate from your company, which means the assets of the company are not in your name, as in Makora, but is in the name of the company. That's that limited liability protection. Understood? So when they say ensure statutory, legal, and regulatory compliance, Christina, what is that?
Statutory, legal, and what was it?
Regulatory compliance.
Well, statutory would mean that the company is abiding by all of the laws set out in the company law.
In the act.
In the act, yeah. To ensure that the company continues to meet those requirements every year. Would that be the same as legal and regulatory?
Not necessarily.
Regulatory in referring to like the annual returns and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And what's legal?
Legal would be ensuring that the company doesn't breach any laws.
Doesn't
breach any
no, what's legal compliance? Legal compliance means that the company itself and all of the actions that it carries out, that they're in compliance with the law and they're in compliance with your articles of association.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Right.
I almost thought that had something to do with ensuring that the agents and the registered agent or whatever keeps those things intact, but I understand.
I'm gonna bring that in at the end, the FCSPs.
Okay, all right.
So the third one was to allow shareholders to be able to inspect corporate documents properly and adequately. Why is that important? This is the third reason why you maintain corporate records. Isn't it that the law that these records are maintained for inspection? And that means that they always be up to date and ready for inspection. Then the fourth one is to fully document the shareholders, directors, and officers' due diligence. Why is that necessary? Why do you need to do that? Makira.
Maybe in case there is like a court order or something against the company, they'll always have that information on file.
That's one reason. Anyone else wants to add?
I would add generally for compliance purposes.
It's for compliance purposes. More. Whenever you're conducting business with vendors, internationally or local, as a part of the due diligence, the company, before they do business, would ask you for your directors. In some instances, they will actually ask you for due diligence on your directors and officers.
Is it to make sure also that they aren't bankrupt and things like that?
Yes, there's a declaration, yeah, there's a box that you tick for that. But more importantly for directors and officers is what they want to see is their capacity to engage the company in contracts. Because remember, when you have a list of persons, annually a company will state who are its authorized signatories. If it's a very small company, it'll just be a sheet with A, B, and C. The bigger the company, and if it moves from a private to a public company, then they have levels. So fully documenting the shareholders, the directors, and officers is a role that the secretary plays. The secretary has to maintain those records. Always maintaining that those KYC documents are up to date. And making sure that the annual statement is filed on time for the company. Because those are the documents that you need when you're transacting business.
Are those normally filed with the registered office? Or does that go in straight to the Registrar General?
No, it has to be stamped by the Registrar General and kept on the file.
At
It's
the
prepared,
registered office?
yeah, it's prepared by the secretary. Now, it depends now. If you're talking about a public company, it would be at the company itself. If you're talking about a company that is managed and administered by an FCSP, it is in that office. If they are the registered agent, they prepare all of those documents.
So all companies aren't managed by FCSP? Or does it have to be managed by an FCSP?
No, not all. Remember now, when we started the first class, we have CACs and we have FCSPs, IBCs. IBCs are the international ones. Those international ones, most of those are under an FCSP. You do have some CACs that are under an FCSP. And the CAC, the majority of them are local companies. So they would have an FCSP, most likely maybe in some instances, just their registered agent, which means that they will do all the filings for them. And they're connected to a law firm. So the law firm does the legal side of their work because their corporate documents are kept there. And then their registered office can be the FCSP, or it can be where the actual business is conducted. Remember, the registered office is where, if there is a legal matter, this is where the documents are to be delivered to. That's what the registered office means. The registered agent is the company that actually does the filing. So if you have an IBC, or if you have a CAC, and an FCSP is your registered agent, and you decide that, guess what? Myself, Sandy, and Sharella on the board. Sharella doesn't want to be on the board anymore. I'm going to put Christina there. They would send an email to the FCSP stating that is what they want to do, providing a copy of the passport and address verification. The FCSP then have to draft a resolution, send it back to you to review, and if you agree, sign it, send it back. Then they have to make the amendment to the annual statement. And then they go to the register of directors and office, and they make the requisite changes there also. And they're billed for that annually. Anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, so it is a lucrative business. So if you wanted to act as a registered agent, not only do you have to learn the legislation and the case law that go with this, you're also going to have to learn how to draft resolutions to effect the changes from the company. And tie into that would be you knowing the memo and arts of each company, because they're not all the same. And then the last one is, of course, keeping current and accurate information on the corporate affairs, which means having audited financial statements if they are required. And they're not required for an IBC, just a confirmation. But of course, this list is not exhaustive because it depends on the nature of your business and where you're doing business. So for CAC, Section 17 requires the company to maintain a registered office at all times in the Bahamas. The address must be filed with the memo and arts at incorporation or within 30 days of incorporation. The directors can change the address of the registered office, but of course you have to notify the Registrar General of the change in address. Because if you don't have a registered office on record, then by law, any notices to your company cannot be delivered. So under Section 18, a company must prepare and maintain the following corporate records at the registered office: a copy of the memo and arts and all amendments to it, the minutes of meetings and the resolution of shareholders of the company, copies of any notices that's required by the Act, and any register that is required by the Act, such as the register of members. So that register of members or shareholders has to be kept at the registered office. And of course, it includes their name, their address, and their occupation, the number of shares held by them, and distinguishing each share by its number and the amount paid and agreed to be paid on each share. The date on which the name of any person was entered on the register and the date on which any person ceased to be a member. Section 56(2) speaks to the register of members subject to such restrictions as be imposed by the directors, may be inspected by members of the company and any member of the general public upon payment of such fee as may be determined by the directors. The register of members, of course, can be in any form that the directors approve. It could be in magnetic, it could be electronic, or any other storage form. And of course, the company must be able to produce legible evidence of its contents. And that could be either to the authorities, or it can be to the regulators. An annual statement requirement, the filing of the annual statement, and of course, the annual returns, which speaks to declaring whether or not 60% of the shares of the company are beneficially owned by Bahamians. An annual return must be signed by 2 directors or 1 director and the secretary. And then Section 59, you see that right there, Sandy?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of picked up where you were going earlier.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay, you got it.
Thank
you. I know, Christina right there saying, what in the world are they talking about? But you'll get it soon.
I'm here.
You get it?
I'm listening.
A request for an extension of time in order to permit compliance with Section 59 may be made to the Registrar General on certain special conditions, and of course, the publication of the company name at the registered office. So if we go to the IBC, of course, you know, the IBC must have a registered office at all times in the Bahamas. The address of the registered office must be submitted to the Registrar General along with the memo of arts on application for incorporation of the IBC. The directors of an IBC may change the address of the registered office and notify the Registrar General within 14 days after the change is being made. And of course, an IBC must have a registered agent at all times in the Bahamas. And as you know, a person cannot act as a registered agent unless they are licensed by the Securities Commission to provide financial and corporate services under the Act. And this section does not apply to a company that is licensed under the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act. The name and address of the registered agent must be submitted to the Registrar General for registration at the date of incorporation of the IBC. And the Registrar General maintains a register of registered agents. Similar to the Companies Act, an IBC must maintain a share register at its registered office. An IBC is also required to keep a share register at its registered office. It is not required to file the share register with the Registrar General. Section 29, subsection 1 specifies the information required to be contained in the share register, and then failure to keep a share register is of course an offense with a fine of $10,000 or 2 years imprisonment. The share register may be in such form similar to the CAC, could be magnetic, electronic, or any other data storage form. And the company should be able to produce legible evidence of its contents. So under Section 35B of the IBC Act, a register of mortgages and charges may be prepared and kept at the registered office. The IBC may elect to submit the register of mortgages and charges for registration with the Registrar General, if they decide to do so. So by law, an IBC must maintain a register of directors and officers. And that register will have the name and addresses of the persons who are directors and officers of the company, the date on which each person was appointed as director or officer of the company, the date on which each person ceased to be a director or officer of the company. The register of directors and officers, again, just like the register for members, can be magnetic, electronic, or another data storage form. And it must be legible for either the authorities or regulators. And of course, the register of directors has to be filed with the Registrar General. Under Section 11 of the IBC Act, the register of directors and officers must be filed within 12 months of appointment. And requirements for inspection of company records by an attorney or by a member in accordance with Section 68 of the IBC Act. So, I thought today I would have had all of my draft answers so we could have gone through the homework, but we don't. So, and I can talk about homework because I need you all to try it. What's that? No, that's not me. So let's see if we could clarify again in Unit 5. let's talk about maintaining these corporate records. So if you were working at an FCSP and you have IBCs, what do you think your day-to-day function would be?
Ensuring that the documents are all in order.
And when you say the documents are all in order, what do you mean?
So ensuring that each company met the KYC requirements. So we have the memo and articles in hand. And so not only we have it, but they were also filed with at the registrar.
Anything else? Knowing that the IBCs are always under attack for potential money laundering. How does an FCSP guard against being caught up in that web or suspected of?
Well, the register of members will have, it will ultimately drill down to the warm body behind the IBC. So once they have the register that has the owner of the company, and even if the company is owned by a company, we should still ultimately see the person behind that corporate entity. And that's done by way of the register of members.
Okay. So if we look at an IBC and it has that limited liability protection, one from the records being kept here by its registered agent, the other one by the way in which it has been incorporated under the Solomon Principle, how does an investor protect itself when it's doing business internationally?
You mean an investor that's not a part of the IBC in question, or
Not part
an
of.
investor that's doing business with this IBC?
Yes. How do they protect themselves? Makira, how? This is one of the reasons why a lot of international persons incorporate IBCs, but they also do a lot of business around the world using IBCs. So if I were to do business with an IBC that's been incorporated in the Bahamas, how do I protect myself? Any ideas? Knowing that your reliance is placed on the FCSP, who is your registered agent. So when I'm out there doing business with a third party, how do they get their confidence? One, that they're doing business with a legitimate company. And two, that this company is in good standing.
The FCSP?
What do you mean?
You said you're asking how does the companies that's registered under an FCSP get their assurance?
No, the persons that they're doing business with.
Like their clients?
No, let's just say I'm a foreigner. I have an IBC here. My registered agent is ABC company. I'm going to enter into a business whereby I am an intermediary. I put buyers and sellers together.
Right.
And I'm going to be doing business with this IBC. How do I know that this IBC is legitimate?
Because the seal and everything is on the document, so I know it's a legitimate company. I see the certificate of.
Certificate of
good standing.
incorporation and stuff.
Is that the only way?
I'm trying to find out now, is that the only way? So you're trying to say whenever they're about to do business with third party, they must produce their certificate of incorporation and what?
The
Is
memo
that
and
how
ours.
done? No.
As you mentioned before, the certificate of good standing,
Yes.
and then they would want to know who the principals are of the company.
Right.
Registered agents and, not registered agents, like directors and things.
Well, who has authority to sign on behalf of the company?
Right, okay.
Right. So because one of the key things is you want to know who is behind the company, but you need to know, especially from a legal standpoint, whether or not that company is in good standing.
Mhm.
Because then you go back to section 22, speaking about contracts. Because if the company is not in good standing, or the person who is transacting doesn't have the authority to act on behalf of the company, then it becomes a legal issue. So that's why it's so important for FCSB to always maintain the records. And they must always be up to date. Because while you're sitting here and doing your job, the beneficial owners of those IBCs are out there transacting business. And so at all times in their mind, their company, the company's records are up to date, and that company is in good standing. And depends on who they're doing business with. They can come to you and say, guess what? I entered into a contract 3 months ago. And at that time, I needed to have a certificate of good standing, or their regulator or whoever they're doing business with says that for their record, they need a certificate of good standing at that point in time. And when you look at that point in time, there was something you were supposed to do that you didn't do, which means that you cannot get a certificate of good standing. So that's why it's critical that corporate records are kept and maintained. And maintain means that, yes, you receive it electronically. It has to be filed electronically. It has to be categorized correctly. And you have to have backup. Always being mindful of what? When it comes to maintaining and keeping corporate records, what would you always be mindful of? It's RR. Two words. R and R. There's no and in the middle, but there's two R's.
Not a clue. Something review?
No.
Right. Oh,
Record keeping requirements, risk rating. I don't
Yeah,
know.
record keeping, record retention.
okay.
Yeah, that is key. Keeping and maintaining corporate records mean you must be mindful of record retention.
Okay.
That is key to this whole, the whole role of corporate record keeping and corporate governance, knowing what documents to maintain and what documents to keep and how you store it. Because when you're looking at ensuring statutory, legal, and regulatory compliance, it's also important in that regard. And nothing is worse than being requested for information on a company, and that company was dissolved or struck off 15 years ago, and you're still holding those records. So it's always important that you comply with statutory, legal, and regulatory compliance. And I know it is a lot, and that's why you must always have adequate staff to deal with keeping and maintaining records. Without having proper corporate records, it's difficult for persons to make decisions or day-to-day decisions in administration of either a transaction, or if these IBCs or these companies are a part of a trust structure. Because when a trustee is transacting business, he doesn't have time to be figuring out whether or not this company is in compliance, because it should be in compliance. And you'll see that same trust to make sure that the corporate records are maintained and kept properly. You also see it from the legal side. Because if a legal transaction is being drawn up, the company has to be in good standing. And that being in good standing is not referring just to having the memo and art, certificate of incorporation, certificate of name change, making sure that the filings were done to the registrar, but it also means, looking at point number 4, that all the due diligence of the members, the officers, directors are on file and they are current. So all of these 5 points come together.
I have a question on that last point,
Okay.
Mrs. Archer. How often is corporate due diligence updated? I know maybe passports, because passports expire, but well, for two questions.
Mm-hmm.
What among the corporate due diligence would have to be updated, and how often?
Okay, so the documents to be updated would be the passport. That one must always be current. Now, when it comes to the address verification, that would depend on when the IBC or the CAC does its annual, what you call compliance update.
Mm-hmm.
They would list their directors and officers. And so if you were a director and you live at 1234, but you're now at ABC Street, when that form is filled out for you by the corporate secretary or the director, the corporate administrator, when they review that with what's on their file, they'll begin to see that you had a change of address.
Okay, I got it.
And they will ask you for the address verification.
Okay.
Yeah, but the document that they look for is the passport or your national identity card. Whatever document you use as your primary document, that's the one they're going to make sure that it's still valid.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, some companies have built their own software where the system automatically tells them that this passport has expired. And then some people do it manually, depending on how many companies you have that you're managing. But what you don't want is to have a company out there that is transacting business and it is not in good standing.
Understood.
Yeah. And then another thing you have is you have companies that are out there doing business where you would have billed those companies to pay their invoices for the services and they haven't billed. But be mindful that those companies are out there doing business. And so you can't have that perpetual gap going on for 3, 4, 5 years. Because you're not only putting yourself at risk, you're putting your jurisdiction at risk. Because those persons know they haven't paid, but they're still out there doing business. So that's another thing that you have to be mindful of. Now, if you look at a CAC versus an IBC is more filings.
Yep, I see.
Yeah, there's a lot of filings. And IBC is very easy to maintain, but it's the CACs that give you more work. So for a public company and being a corporate secretary, you're normally very busy because there's a lot of filings to do. And filings not just with the registrar, but filings also with the regulator. And that regulator could be wide, because some institutions have 2 regulators. So all these things you have to bear in mind, and especially when it comes to looking at issues, how do you deal with it? Anyone had the chance to read the Table A? I'm probably asking too much.
It's always good to be a glass half full kind of lady, I think. I didn't get a chance.
What homework should I give you all? I don't know. I need to give you all some homework. Should I say read Table A? But I know everybody is busy.
Yeah.
What is Table A?
Where is Table A?
At the end. It's the very last document in the CAC.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, yes, you did refer to that before. I do remember, but no.
Yeah. Because remember, I made the point that the Act provides that you do not have to actually draft an article. You could just refer to Table A. But if there are specific things that you want in your articles, then you would have one drawn up. But what I want you to do is that if you're in the role of a corporate administrator, there comes a time when you read the articles and the articles are not clear or the articles are silent on a certain matter. Now, referring to a CAC company, you need to be able to know that you can go to the Table A and see if an explanation is provided for the issue that you're dealing with. That's why I'm asking you that you read it. Because if you read it, if an issue comes up, your mind won't be blank. There is a source document you can go to. You probably can't remember exactly if it was addressed, but you can say, let me go to Table A and look at the provision that's in the model articles of association. So I really need you to read it so you can understand even better how a company operates.
Is there a similar table for IBCs or that's?
No.
That's cool. Otherwise.
No. Yeah, it's just something very simple, simple in terms of layout and actions, but not as expansive. But you really need to read the Table A. Now, if you do corporate administration, you begin to see those that were done a long time ago. Written in Old English. The later ones are in English. But you need to understand more how a company operates and what you have to do in order to be in compliance with the Articles of Association. So I really need you all to read it. So I think my homework question is going to come from the articles. Christina was going to say something, she changed her mind, so now Shirella comes to the rescue.
No, sorry.
Why? No, I thought you were gonna say something.
No, ma'am, sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask which articles, but I'm gonna sound it.
Which articles?
Yeah, I'm assuming you mean the I don't know what you mean.
In the Company Act, at the very back, there is a model Articles of Association.
Okay.
So the homework question is going to come from there.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna take it from there. So I'm gonna force you to read it. So you could find some time, carve out some time and read it. But answer my last week's question. I need that answered so I can see if you understand. And then we could discuss that at the beginning of next week's class. So we have any questions?
Just two.
Go ahead.
If anyone can tell me when the capstone was sent, I know you sent it to us early. I can't remember which date. I remember seeing it. Anybody remember which email that would have been in, please?
Let me look, see if I can find it on mine. If someone could find it for me. Let's see.
Trying to put my ducks in a row.
Oh Lord, yeah, put your ducks in a row. I think next class we're going to do share. So for those who haven't done last week's homework, they have that. Then they'll have another homework coming. And then you'll have to read Unit 6, which is on shares. Okay, I'm looking in my sent. Let me see this. That is it. I tried to send them out early because remember you all asked for me to send it out early.
Yeah, I recall seeing it and saying woohoo. But then I can't find the email. I was searching even as we were going through class, but I didn't come across it.
I'm trying to see. Let me see.
And that would it have come from Miguel's email or yours? That'll probably, because I was searching both.
I'm looking in both right now. But hold on. Shirley, don't you have it? Well, how come I don't see it? Capstone. I think the capstone would have been sent by Miguel.
Okay, I'll search some more
Okay.
once we're done.
Hold on.
Okay, the date is August 6th, 2022.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Makira.
She found it when I found it. Okay. Yeah. So that's the capstone. I don't wait until the last minute to get work started on these. Because then what's gonna happen is you're gonna rush it and then you'd be calling me and asking me about your grade. Why it looks the way it looks. So get started. And then if you get stuck, It depends on where you get stuck and how you get stuck. I'll see if I can help. All right.
Okay.
I did say it is a short class, so you have time for those who didn't do their homework to do it. And then for those who did do their homework, like Sandy, she
You
could
can go shopping.
You can go shopping, yes. And then read table A when you get back.
I will for sure.
Read table A, because I don't understand. You have to do homework. Are you all moving into company law too?
I see they're offering it
I'd like to, yeah.
pretty soon, September.
Yeah, we normally do it right after.
Okay, so yeah,
Next year, because I have a course that I'm doing in September, or the end of this month, in September. So I can be with him.
Well, company law 2 is a little bit different because we won't be doing company law. It's expected that you would have already had the basics that you need to know of how a company operates. So what we do is we look at the products that we offer here in the Bahamas and the legislation that go with those products.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's not going back into the Companies Act and learning this itself, the Company Act itself, how it operates, why it does what it does. It's expected that you know that already. We're gonna look at the products and how those products operate, and they all have their own legislation. So people normally prefer, well, they say company law 2 to them is much easier. But that's if you like companies and all the products that goes with it. All right, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, enjoy the rest of your day. And next week, of course, will be longer because we're dealing with shares.
Okay.
have a
All
good
right.
evening. Good
Okay.
afternoon.
Have
Yeah.
a great weekend, everybody.
Yes, please
All right,
do.
same to you.
All right.
And
Bye-bye.
thank you, Ms. Archer. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you're welcome.